Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The Alberta legislature is back in session. Government House Leader Joseph Scow explains what his government's priorities will be. A fundraiser has been launched to support an Alberta woman who says she will die if she doesn't receive an organ transplant soon. And as the World Cup continues in Qatar, our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari explains how much money the Taliban has made from the games.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The Alberta legislature was back in session on Monday. Government officials say the focus will be geared toward addressing the inflation crisis and standing up for Alberta's interests. Government House Leader Joseph Scow says legislation will be brought forward to protect our province's constitutional jurisdiction, enable more financial support for families and seniors, and address long-standing issues in the justice system. Scow says, however, that first things first, and that includes the Alberta Sovereignty Act.
It will send a clear message that we will defend and promote our province's prosperity and constitutional jurisdiction. The Alberta Sovereignty within a United Canada Act will ensure our voice is heard so that Albertans can freely contribute and participate in Confederation as proud Canadians without fear of unjust or unjustified federal intrusion into our lives. It will also allow Alberta to set its own path as part of a strong and united Canada. You will hear more about the details of the Alberta Sovereignty within a United Canada Act tomorrow when it's introduced in the legislature.
Now, the Alberta government announced more financial help for those who are struggling with the rising cost of living. Payments for AISH, income support, the seniors benefit, and the child and family benefit will go up 6% in 2023. Alberta Premier Daniel Smith says it's very important to help those who are on a fixed income.
Nowhere is the need for help more urgent than for those on fixed incomes. Albertans like low-income seniors and AISH recipients have limited flexibility to adapt to price increases. And right now, they're being steadily squeezed as inflation continues to eat away at their spending power. They need a cushion to absorb the worst effects of high prices. And I'm happy to announce that as part of our government's Affordability Action Plan, we will provide one.
Albertans receiving AISH and income support benefits will see the increase on their January payments, which will be sent out on December the 22nd. Alberta Seniors Benefit will see the increase on their January checks, and those receiving the Alberta Child and Family Benefit will see an increase in February. Now here's a follow-up to a story we first brought you last week. An Alberta woman says she's being put in a tough situation where she must either get the COVID-19 vaccine or potentially die. Sheila Annette Lewis filed a legal challenge against Alberta Health Services, doctors, and a hospital as she was unable to receive a life-saving organ transplant due to her not wanting to get vaccinated. A panel from the Alberta Court of Appeal ruled against her. Now, there's currently a publication ban on the doctor's identity, the organ, and the location of the transplant program. Lewis has not been out of her house for over 6 months. A fundraiser has been set up to help support Lewis through a very difficult time.
If anything I need for like personals or anything at all, paying a bill, like my light bills, because I have 4 machines. 2 are pumping oxygen and 2 are filling my tank full of oxygen. So my light bill is like $1,000 a month. And that isn't easy to swing when you have zero income.
What can I do to help make this better for her? What can I do in my kind of own power to help her? And so I thought I'm going to reach out to her and see if I can, just at least offer that support and see if there's anything I can do. With that, we started chatting, and I actually wrote a letter to the Premier saying how, it's a horrible thing that's going on and nobody should have to deal with that or go through that. And she deserves so much better, and she deserves to have that organ transplant regardless of if she decides to get the vaccine or not.
Lewis says 2 immunologists testified on her behalf, saying if she does get the jab, she will not be able to make it to the operating table to receive a new organ. She estimates she will have about 6 months to live if she does not receive an organ transplant. Well, it was a cooler day across much of southwestern Alberta today, and more snow is on the way for our region, along with cold, wind chill values overnight. Angela Stewart is out in the field at Legacy Park with an early peek of the forecast. Angela, when can we expect to see some snow?
Yeah, Hal, that snow is expected for a majority of the week, but we will be getting some reprieve later on this week. Tonight, though, that wind chill reaching about -25. Tomorrow, a mix of sun and cloud and a high of -14. As for how the rest of the week is shaping up, I'll have all those details coming up later in the show.
Thanks so much, Angela. Stay warm. The Mayor's Hockey Challenge took place over the weekend at the ATB Centre. All of the money raised from the event goes towards supporting local food banks here in our city. Danielle McIntyre with the Interfaith Food Bank Society of Lethbridge says she's happy to see the city supporting the food banks through initiatives like this one.
You know, it's so great for us to see the mayor and the city of Lethbridge backing the community in an initiative to raise funds for the food banks. Certainly it's a great Christmas tradition, but it's also vastly needed right now. Every little bit that comes in right now is going to go directly into our Christmas programs and our services. And we are very grateful that this event took place over the weekend and that is going to continue to accept donations online for the next few days.
Around $3,000 was raised to date from the event. A total of 240 pounds of food donations and gifts, plus about $2,000 with the financial contributions were also tallied up. Neuron Scooters has officially ended their season this year in Lethbridge. Now, since launching back in April, riders have traveled over 400,000 kilometers and about 52% of excursions have replaced a car trip. Isaac Ransom with Neuron says the scooters have also cut back on CO2 emissions within the city.
36 tons of CO2 emissions has been avoided. Generally, what we see is about half of all of the rides replace a car trip. So, using your vehicle, as you said, or maybe taking a taxi, which is having a significant impact on lessening our carbon footprint in our communities here in Lethbridge. So that's great news. What we also know from our riders is that typically when they are riding the e-scooters, they're using them to patronize local businesses like restaurants and coffee shops and other amenities in the city. So it really is a convenient, fun way to get around the city.
Now, there isn't a date set for when Neuron will be back, but they anticipate sometime next spring. The bright lights of Christmas are back on full display here in Lethbridge. The Caldwell family hosted their annual event on Sunday evening to showcase the dazzling lights of the holidays as they've decked out their home in full Christmas regalia. Video journalist Micah Quinn has the story on the Christmas with the Caldwells initiatives that also doubles as a fundraiser for local organizations here in our city.
Vince and Shondell Caldwell have been putting up this amazing Christmas light display for the past 5 years. This year, the couple is hoping to raise 3,000 pounds of food for the Lethbridge Food Bank, as well as 3 truck boxes full of toys, which will be distributed to the Salvation Army's Toys for Tots campaign. You might be wondering exactly how many bright lights are shining at the Christmas home.
We're over 34,000 lights. So
Doubled lights from last year.
Yeah.
And 99% LED.
There are also a few new items that are sure to bring Christmas cheer this holiday season.
The movie posters are new this year. I built a sleigh as a photo booth, really, for people to get in and come take a family picture.
The Toy Factory, Santa's Toy Factory this year.
We built the Toy Factory.
Took you about 30 hours to build that.
Yeah.
The couple said it's amazing to see the community rally together for a good cause.
140 hours I spent this year putting everything up, and it's pretty great. People always drive by and honk and say thank you, and it's really just our way of,
Giving to the
taking
community.
care of our community and paying forward.
The clip-clop of horse hooves was also heard at the event as Lethbridge residents took a ride with the Once Upon a Time wagon, carriage, and sleigh rides based out of Sterling, Alberta.
In celebration of our 5-year annual kickoff party, we had the sleigh rides. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
The lights will be on display every night until January 7th from 4:30 to 11 p.m. For more information and the address of the home, you can visit the Facebook page Christmas with the Caldwells. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Over 34,000 lights. Wow, that's incredible. Cereals Canada and the Canadian Grain Commission have assessed the quality of this year's Canadian wheat crop, and it's pretty good news for our farmers. The report says over 90% of Canada Western Red Spring crop was graded as number 1 and number 2, with protein content higher than average. You can say the same for both Durham and Canada Prairie Spring Red as well. To discuss this in more detail is David Bishop, the Director of Alberta Wheat. He joins us now from Barron's, Alberta. David, it truly was a very good news scenario for many of our producers this year.
Yeah, this year it looks like we're going to have a great crop of wheat as far as quality goes. Like you were saying earlier, the protein's great. We're all number 1 and 2 majority of the crop is. So, no, we have a good product to export this year.
So big picture, what does this mean for a lot of our farmers, especially here in southern Alberta?
Generally speaking, the world likes Canadian wheat because of our quality, and we're going to be in that kind of in the driver's seat again with quality this year because of what came off. Ideal harvest conditions created the yield, not so much yields, but the quality of our wheat this year. And durum is one that's a little tougher to get, so it's great to see our number 1 durum is by far going to be a good crop.
Thanks so much for your time, David. That was David Bishop, Director of Alberta Wheat, joining us from Barron's, Alberta. Leaders of the James Smith Cree Nation in Saskatchewan are meeting with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Trudeau is visiting the First Nation after it was rocked by a deadly stabbing rampage almost 3 months ago. 11 people were killed and 18 others were injured in the community, along with the nearby village of Weldon. James Smith Cree Chief Wally Burns has been calling for a shift to more Indigenous-led policing and has also said the community needs more funding for housing. Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino is accusing the Conservatives of whipping up fear around the outlawing of assault-style rifles. The Liberals' recently proposed legislation includes an evergreen definition of a prohibited assault-style firearm and gun control legislation being studied right now. Mendicino says Ottawa only wants to reinforce a regulatory ban on assault-style weapons by enshrining a definition in legislation. The Tories, meanwhile, claim the government's amendments amounts to the most significant hunting rifle ban in Canadian history.
Violent crime is up 32%. Canada's homicide rate is at the highest it's been since 2005. And gang-related killings are on the rise. And what does this Liberal government choose to do? Rather than go after criminals and gun smugglers, they're going after farmers and duck hunters. Mr. Speaker, will the minister finally admit that the Liberal soft-on-crime approach is not working and the evidence shows it has to end?
I want to be clear that we are absolutely not targeting law-abiding gun owners. The guns that we are going after are the assault rifles that were used in Portapique and Truro in Nova Scotia. The guns that we are going after are the guns that were used at the Quebec City Mosque in Quebec City. The guns that we are going after, Mr. Speaker, are the guns that were tragically used in Polytechnique. Those are the assault rifles that we are targeting in Bill C-21, and it would just be time now for the Conservatives to stop filibustering and study this bill, debate this bill, and pass this bill so that we can end gun violence once and for all.
Giving Tuesday is coming up fairly soon, a time to give more of yourself, including financial resources, to help support many who need it the most, including many of our nonprofit groups here in Canada. Nova Scotia Liberal MP Darren Fisher spoke about the importance of Giving Tuesday in the House of Commons today.
After Black Friday and Cyber Monday, it's Giving Tuesday, a global movement of generosity. On Giving Tuesday, I'm encouraging everyone to perform random acts of kindness. You can help a neighbor, buy a coffee for the person in line behind you, pick up litter, let someone have your seat in the bus, folks. The opportunities are truly endless. Have a favorite charitable organization in your community? Call them. Ask them if you can volunteer. Ask them how you can help. Let's be inspired by Giving Tuesday and be kind to one another. On Tuesday and every day, let's help those who need us in our communities. Mr. Speaker, I ask that everyone in this House and across all of Canada join me in celebrating Giving Tuesday.
The eruption of the world's largest volcano began late Sunday night. Hawaii's Mauna Loa erupted, spreading ash and lava flows that were contained within the summit area and fortunately did not threaten nearby communities. The eruption on the Big Island is the first time since 1984. Scientists are waiting to see if this remains a summit-only eruption or a rift zone eruption. Officials say the average Mauna Loa eruption lasts a couple of weeks, while it calms down usually after the first few days. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is urging residents to save as much power as they can. He says Russia is continuing its assault of targets critical to the country's power infrastructure. He says as long as Russia has missiles, they will not stop their attacks. Ukraine's energy provider says it is still short 27% of output after Russian strikes on energy infrastructure. The World Cup continues in Qatar. Now, when it comes to building the stadiums, the Taliban made millions of dollars during the construction. Now, that's according to our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, who has the details.
the list of countries that are willing to cooperate with the Taliban is increasingly shrinking, and therefore, if there was an opportunity to help build the stadium, to provide parts, to provide labor, the Taliban was there and willing to volunteer. They're also colluding with China. They're colluding with the Iran regime. They're colluding with Russia. So this is what happens when we try to isolate countries. The side effect of that being that they find each other and they partner up.
Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will also talk about some controversy involving the Iranian flag and how Iran wants Team USA kicked out of the World Cup in Qatar. World Cup fans are arriving in droves to the desert just outside of Doha in Qatar for their perfect Instagram moment. Many are riding camels onto the rolling dunes.
كل بده يركب ففي ناس ما بتعرف عن الجمل أي شيء يعني بس بده يركب بده يصور فأنا الوحيد المحتك بالجمل بعرف أنه الجمل إذا كان تعب مثلا اشتغل كثير مثلا ركبت فوقه حوالي 30-40 شخص كلهم ركبوا أنا متأكد أنه الجمل واحد يعني دول كلهم ركبوا فلازم أعطيه فرصة بتاعت راحة.
I wonder how well those camels would do with our winters here in southern Alberta. Well, it was a cold start to our work and school week here in Alberta, and the cooler temperature shall remain. There's even a chance of more flurry activity as well here in Lethbridge. Complete weather details are on deck. Well, our spring-like days we had last week are officially behind us, and more snow is expected for our region this week. Angela Stewart is out at Legacy Park and has all of the weather details for us. Angela, we can expect more snow and serious wind chill values to kick in this week for Lethbridge?
Yeah, how those wind chills will be quite cold overnight and for the rest of the week. So make sure you have all your winter gear ready to go. Hats, gloves, shoes, winter coats. The wind chill tonight, -25 overnight and a low of -17. Tuesday, we can expect a chance of snow with winds gusting to about 40 km, a high of -14 for the day, with that wind chill reaching -27 in the morning and -22 for the afternoon. Wednesday, periods of snow and -16 for the day. Thursday, chilly conditions, periods of snow, -19 for the high. Friday, sunshine, but still quite chilly, -17. Saturday, that snow expected to return, about a 30% chance of it, and -10. Sunday, -14 and a chance of snow. Our average high for this time of year is 1. Our average low is -9. 15 degrees was our highest temperature recorded back on this day in 1956. Our lowest temperature was a chilly -32 back in 2006. The sun rose at 8:03 this morning and it set at 4:36, giving us just over 8.5 hours of daylight. Looking at temperatures across the country now for Tuesday. On the coast, Victoria, snow about 5 centimeters and a high of 1. Vancouver, a chance of snow and 0 for the day. Some light winds over the southern sections of the city. Back in Alberta, in Calgary for Tuesday, chance of snow, about a 30% chance, and -14. Wind chill -22 in the morning and -28 in the afternoon. Edmonton, chance of snow, temperature steady near -15. That wind chill near -24. Saskatoon, periods of light snow, -12, wind gusting to 50 km at times. Regina, periods of light snow, -11 with the wind chill near -23. Winnipeg, a chance of snow and about a 60% chance, -3 for the day. To the central part of the country now, in Toronto, cloudy and -3 for Tuesday. Ottawa, mainly cloudy and a high of 3 for the day. Montreal, a high of 0 and mainly sunny. Fredericton, sunshine and 0 for the high. Halifax, 3 degrees for the high and sunny conditions. Charlottetown, a chance of snow and a 30% chance, a high of 1 for the day. St. John's clearing late in the afternoon, wind sometimes gusting to about 60 km and a high of 1. And that's a look at your full weather forecast from Legacy Park here in Lethbridge.
Today's weather report is brought to you by Ridge Utilities, providing competitive rates for electricity, natural gas, and internet, while investing back in communities across southern Alberta.
Shopify says sales by merchants on its system set a new Black Friday record of $3.36 billion US. The Ottawa-based e-commerce company says that peak period, merchants from around the world were seeing total sales of $3.5 million per minute. Overall sales were up 17% from a year ago. Canada was among the countries where Shopify merchants recorded the highest sales, along with the United States and the United Kingdom. Days after flocking to stores for Black Friday, consumers turned their attention online for Cyber Monday. Adobe Analytics, which tracks transactions for top online retailers, says Cyber Monday will remain the year's biggest online shopping day and rake in sales of between $11.2 and $11.6 billion. That would be an increase of 8.5% from 2021. Some analysts expect the amount of items consumers purchase could remain unchanged or even fall compared to previous years, so the increase could be fueled by higher prices. This, in fact, is Cyber Monday, a day many Canadians look forward to save big bucks online when they start their Christmas holiday shopping season. Now, some of the local retailers in Lethbridge also participated in Cyber Monday. Cami Tanner of the Herbal Apothecary says having a Cyber Monday sale does provide great deals, but also a Canadian source for the Alberta customers.
Because we carry a lot of really unique items, very medicinal, very heavy mushroom and herbal base, they're very unique to the area and to Alberta. So it's important to be able to have this to be accessible to everybody Alberta-wide, that they can order and not have to go to the US, for example, to order products like this. We just wanted to encourage people to get out, start doing their Christmas shopping, and give everybody a bit of a break financially on their wallets to come and take advantage of some of these amazing products that we carry and have a little bit of a discount.
Stats Canada says back in 2020, 82% of Canadians shopped online for Cyber Monday. That's an increase of almost 10% from 2018. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 163 points on the day to finish at 20,220. The Dow was also down 497 points to 33,849. The S&P 500 was down 62 on the day to 3963, and the Nasdaq was down 176 points to 11,049. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 96 cents to 77.24 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 31 cents to 671 US. Gold was up 16 cents to 1741.53 US an ounce, and silver was up a cent to $20.94 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $12.62 per bushel, barley's at $9.80, canola's at $18.46, and corn is at $11.58 per bushel. Live cattle were down 50 cents to $152.58. Feeder cattle January contract was down $1.43 to $176.88, and lean hogs were down $3.18 to $80.60. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 74.10 US. Recapping one of our top stories, the Alberta legislature was back in session on Monday. Government officials say the focus will be geared toward addressing the inflation crisis and standing up for Alberta's interests. Government House Leader Joseph Scow says legislation will be brought forward to protect our province's constitutional jurisdiction, enable more financial support for families and seniors, and address long-standing issues in the justice system. The terror organization, the Taliban, allegedly made millions of dollars during the construction of the stadiums that were built in Qatar for the World Cup. That's according to our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, who will have details for us momentarily. Listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar. It's the 3rd annual Lethbridge Police Service Charity Check Stop on Saturday, December 3rd, beginning at 11:30 a.m. at the NMAX Center parking lot. As a partner with the Christmas Hope campaign, the Check Stop Style Donation Center will be accepting new toys and non-perishable food items that will be shared amongst Lethbridge Family Services Angel Tree, the Salvation Army, Shop of Wonders, Lethbridge Food Bank, and Interfaith Food Bank. This is a community effort to ensure the needs of families in Lethbridge are met during this Christmas season. Celebrate Recovery is a Christ-centered recovery program for any hurt, hang-up, and habit. This group meets Friday nights at Park Meadows Baptist Church. The evening begins at 7 p.m. with a large group session, followed by small groups at 8 with coffee and dessert at 9. For more information, visit celebraterecovery.ca or call Park Meadows Church office at 403-327-4422. And that's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar.
The world's eyes have been on Qatar for the World Cup of Soccer. Now, sadly, Canada will not be advancing to the next round, but it was still pretty cool to see Canada score its first ever World Cup goal against Croatia. Some people would ask, how could a country that has not the best reputation when it comes to human rights win the bid to host the World Cup? To talk about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, how is it that Qatar was able to land one of the world's biggest tournaments next to the Olympics?
Great question, Hal, and it's not something that most people are talking about right now when covering the World Cup. But what is the backstory as to how Qatar got the bid, how there were so many petitions to try to stop this? Why? Because of Qatar's involvement in global terrorism, the human rights abuses. They don't have exactly the cleanest record. So how did that happen? Well, there's a reason why the expression money talks is so popular. That's exactly what happened. So pay to play. And here we are. I know a lot of Americans, I'm sure Canadians, have traveled from this part of the world over there to actually watch the sport, a very popular sport in Europe, in the Middle East, and less so in Canada and the United States. But nonetheless, that's what's going on right now. And many people like yourself and myself who are in the news world, who are following these stories, who are connecting the dots, are not letting up on the backstory as to Qatar's continued human rights abuses, how their stadium was built using help from the Taliban. Also, right now, they are colluding with the Iran regime to crack down on protesters inside Qatar. So imagine that the brutal repression of the Islamic Republic of Iran is continued into those who have gone to watch soccer in Qatar for the World Cup. So a lot to follow here. But again, these are not the stories that we hear coming out of the World Cup. It's more about the excitement of the game and, of course, everyone wanting their home team to win.
Yeah, let's talk about the Taliban's involvement, the terrorist regime. They made millions from the World Cup by providing construction equipment to build the stadiums.
Yeah, well, they are equal opportunity opportunists when it comes to finding partners around the world, and there are not too many, right? So the list that the list of countries that are willing to cooperate with the Taliban is increasingly shrinking, and therefore, if there was an opportunity to help build the stadium, to provide parts, to provide labor, the Taliban was there and willing to volunteer. They're also colluding with China. They're colluding with the Iran regime. They're colluding with Russia. So this is what happens when we try to isolate countries. The side effect of that being that they find each other and they partner up. We do not expect Qatar, who has this World Cup opportunity with so many traveling from the free world there, to be doing this. But again, Hal, when there are no consequences, when nobody's talking about this, when they still were able to land the bid for the World Cup, then they shouldn't worry about where that labor comes from or what they're doing or how they are supporting terror organizations. The one thing I will add about Qatar is that it has always played both sides, both the West and the terror organizations. It has remained on the side of the Iran regime, for example. It has helped the Iran regime circulate funds when the sanctions were very stringent on banking for the Iran regime. But they also maintained their relationships with the United States and the West. And this should be called out if they are going to do this, if they're going to get the World Cup bid, but then to behave in nefarious ways and support terror and human rights abuses and to bring it into their own country at a time like this.
Lisa, Iran is taking part in the World Cup. Now, according to documents leaked by the Black Reward hacktivist group, Iranian authorities worked with Qatar to suppress any anti-regime expressions during the games.
This is horrific, right? We're talking about this a lot on social media right now, particularly those who are following the Iran protests that have evolved into the Iran revolution. There are a lot of people watching soccer, both inside and outside Iran. There are Iranians in the stadium at the World Cup. What many people don't understand is that these Iranians aren't rooting for Iran's team. Now, for a very long time, Iran's soccer team, as a national soccer team, has been known to be very close to the regime. They're known to be the spoiled children of the regime. Therefore, right now, when the people are protesting the regime, they're also protesting their own soccer team. So imagine when we had the game between Iran and England, many Iranians, even inside the stadium and in Iran, were rooting for the other team. They're rooting for England. It's mind-boggling to think that people would travel to the World Cup and not root for their own team, or they use the opportunity to go into the stadium and hold up the old flag of Iran, which is, I shouldn't call it the old flag, it is the flag of the Iranian people. It has the lion and the sun. It's not the Islamic flag. And many of those people were escorted out of the stadium. Their flags were confiscated. They were told to stop. They were told that they cannot wear the Iran protest paraphernalia, which just says woman, life, freedom, which is the slogan of the current Iran movement. And to think, again, that this would follow them into a place where they thought that they would be free to protest. They would be free to not wear their hijabs, free to hold up whatever flag they wanted to, and to root for whomever they wanted to wear the shirts that they wanted to. And again, the Qatar police force, government, etc., working together with Iran's regime to enforce their own laws on Qatar territory.
Now, Iran called for the United States to be punted out of the World Cup after it changed the Iranian flag on social media to show support for those protesters.
Right. So this is also another crazy story. There's so much, political talk coming out of the World Cup, which is interesting because it's a meeting of so many countries, and yet all these political nuances come out. So Iranian expats protested the use of the Islamic flag for the World Cup. And the United States, what they did in a lot of their promotional material is change the flag to the traditional sun and lion flag. That for a very short time, by the way, because there was protests on the other side to change it back from the World Cup authorities, the United States changed it back right away. Iran's regime then comes out and says the U.S. should be thrown out of the game entirely for messing with our flag and removing the Islamic flag from their propaganda, from their promotional material. So again, a lot of kind of protest and counter protest to what can be done. These what may seem as small, insignificant moves are deemed, very significant on the world stage. And here we have Iran's revolution coming into play at the World Cup, and all eyes will be on the U.S.-Iran game as well to see who they root for. Will they be rooting for the United States? I'm sure, regardless of who they're rooting for, they will be calling on the United States during that game to help support their movement inside Iran and to do more for the protesters who are currently on the streets.
Now, still with sports, this is almost turning into a bit of a sportscast here, talking about all the sports. But Lisa, an 11-year-old female table tennis player was praised by Hamas recently because she refused to play against an Israeli player at a recent tournament in Portugal. It appears like anti-Semitism indoctrination is beginning at a very young age.
Yeah, very young age. And we've seen this often with sports, or whether it's been chess games or wrestling games, and here table tennis, where they use the opportunity to say, we will not sit across from an Israeli opponent, therefore gaining the respect and honor of a terror organization like Hamas that praises a young girl for not being tolerant or not sitting across the table from a Jewish person. It's horrific to think that they are indoctrinating at such a young age, but we know that they are, whether it's in their math books, whether it's in their slogans at school. They're teaching them from the age of 4 or 5. And we've even seen examples of that here in the United States at mosques and other, youth groups that are funded by these extremist organizations that do, in fact, promote indoctrination at such a young age. If you can get them at that age, they'll grow up with it and it'll be part of their DNA. And hopefully they will never accept a Jew, regardless of where they're living or what they're doing. But here you have a young girl taking a stand at such a young age and potentially forfeiting her opportunities, right? This is a wonderful opportunity for her. Obviously, she must be a wonderful player that she's on the national stage like that, international stage, I should say. And for her to forfeit the opportunity just because she does not want to sit across from an Israeli, it's horrific to mix that into their childhood. And here we have yet another example of that.
And we see other examples as well in the post-secondary institutions with Jew-free zones in some of the colleges and universities, including in California.
Absolutely. California has had a big issue with this, particularly at UC Berkeley, which is a state school, by the way, Hal. So you're talking about taxpayer money being used at these schools to bring in speakers who are incendiary, who are hateful, who are teaching Jew hatred and other types of hatred, by the way. And again, taxpayer money going to these schools, and there's nothing being done about it. If you remember, under President Trump, there was a legislation that was signed that was threatening to take away any federal funding from universities who would allow anti-Semitism on campus in any form, particularly with speakers, whether banning certain speakers or inviting certain speakers that would basically, propel this ideology. It's going on more and more. We're seeing it across the United States, of course, throughout Europe as well, and of course in the Middle East. But when you see it in the United States and you see it in universities, places where you think they promote tolerance, they promote equality, they have so many different funds and activities and speakers to promote this tolerance, and yet this is where it is rearing its very ugly head. But I will tell you how it begins and ends with the professors, with the deans, with the head of school, with the chancellors. They're the ones who need to be putting their feet down. They're the ones who should be truly putting an end to this kind of bigotry and not letting it go past a certain level to the students, to the student organizations, and bringing it on campus.
Lisa, U.S. military officials say rockets have been targeting coalition forces at a base in northeastern Syria. Now, fortunately, the attack on Friday resulted in no injuries or damage, but it is still very concerning. Do we know at this point in time who fired the rockets?
Yeah, of course, it's very concerning when you have, not only all eyes on Iran's regime. And I say that because they are the ones who are the piggyback bank. They're the ones who are the, rich daddy of the Middle East in terms of funding all of this terror, in terms of funding suicide bombers. They are the #1 world exporter of terrorism, whether it's in Syria or Lebanon or Yemen or Gaza, throughout the world. And no one's talking about it. And while you have protesters on the streets of Iran entering the 3rd month of protests who are trying to bring global attention on the fact that their regime is good for nothing, there's not one good reason this regime should stay in power, whether it's human rights abuses or its funding of global terror, or currently the brutal repression and crackdowns on the people and young people of Iran being murdered for peaceful protest. They're trying to bring our attention to it. And whether it's the UN acting very slowly to call this out, or the United States that just recently pivoted away from very bad foreign policy vis-a-vis the Iran regime when they wanted to make a nuclear deal instead of really calling out these human rights abuses. When you see attacks like this in Syria on Western assets, or again in Yemen or in Lebanon in funding Hezbollah or Hamas or the Houthis, and the list goes on and on, you better bet that the Iran regime's fingerprints are all over these types of attacks.
The Federal Communications Commission banned approvals of new telecommunications and surveillance equipment from several Chinese companies, including Huawei. Lisa, a good move by the Biden administration, as many would argue they pose a major risk to U.S. national security.
Absolutely. And it's about time, because we have had an issue with telecommunications surveillance, and before that, copycat technology from China's government for a very long time. It had not been called out. We were worried about it not being called out in the meeting between Xi Jinping and President Biden just last week, when we were fearful that many important issues were not brought up in the 3.5-hour conversation. But this is a good move by the Biden administration to at least try or attempt to curb the influences and tentacles of China's government. We know that they have spies here. We know that they have a makeshift police force in New York City working to root out dissidents that live in the United States. We know that they're operating on our college campuses, and here you go with technology, of course, attempting to, spy and kind of have a leg up on the United States. I've said this before, Hal. We have Chinese students in the top universities, whether here or in China, learning how to do these things. And in our military, we're learning about pronouns and making sure that we differentiate between pronouns. So there is a huge discrepancy, and it's about time that we wake up to the threat of China's government and what they're capable of doing and what they have been doing while we've been asleep on all of this. So this is a good move, and hopefully more to come on this in terms of curbing China's influence here.
Usually when you think of Mexican asylum seekers, you think of migrants who are making their way to the United States and settling in the United States. But there are apparently refugees fleeing Colima, Mexico, and are making their way to Canada, coming to our country here. Colima is apparently like a war zone with shootings, burning cars, and dismembered bodies being left outside of schools.
You know, this is a growing trend, Hal, and I know you have probably been keeping a finger on the pulse there in Canada, especially at your border with the United States. It seems as though the rumor among migrants is that if you're about to make this trip and you're about to make the sacrifices and risk it all, you might as well keep going north because life might be better on the other side. So a lot of migrants that have been traveling to the United States have been continuing, and past year alone, 8,000 asylees have requested to settle in Canada. That is an exponential jump from the year prior, and authorities believe that that will continue to grow as they continue upward from our southern border here in the United States. They may continue on into Canada. So this is something obviously to keep an eye on. The borders being very hot spots here, north and south for the United States to keep an eye on. Again, accountability is very difficult in this case, and to see just the sheer numbers that we're not able to absorb. It looks like the migrants are taking care of that and finding resources on their own to find and settle in other places.
You know, the more the merrier. We've got lots of room up here, Lisa, and if they open up more Mexican restaurants, I'm all on board that. Absolutely. Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, thanks so much for joining us today from Los Angeles.
My pleasure.
With cold, snowy weather hitting us in southern Alberta, along with the financial pressures of high inflation, there are individuals and families who are in need. The Salvation Army has been helping out for 100 years, and joining me to talk about this is Major Donald Bladen with the Lethbridge Salvation Army. Major Bladen, so great to have you with us.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you.
Wonderful. Okay, so can you maybe first of all tell us a bit about what different kinds of help you offer to our community in Lethbridge and in Fort Macleod?
Yeah, sure. Well, in Lethbridge, we of course have a worshiping community. So we have a church, and we also have a community and family services and a thrift store location. And in Fort Macleod, we rent a small space and we run a food bank out of that location. So we've got our hands in quite a few little pockets of interest for sure.
It definitely sounds that way. Now, have you noticed, like, has inflation impacted the community? Are you seeing more people in need of help?
Yeah, pretty significantly. I believe inflation has had really quite an impact. Our numbers are certainly increasing, and it's hard to give you exact numbers today. But in particular, a lot of newcomers to Canada visit us for food assistance. And of course, that's true both in Lethbridge and in Fort Macleod, but especially Lethbridge, where a bit of a larger center and more resource available. We are seeing an uptick in people visiting us. And we do food distribution during the week, and we do food hampers once a week out in Fort Macleod. So, yeah, those things are, there's a lot of pressure for sure.
Absolutely. And, with that in mind, are you noticing an increase in people needing help to maybe overcome addictions, or is it about the same as last year?
You know, as far as addictions treatment is concerned, we don't have our hands like in sort of a frontline sense right on that button here in Lethbridge. There are other great agencies, of course, that work right on the front line with folk that are struggling in addictions. But of course, addictions are everywhere. We have them in front of us each and every day. And we certainly provide a lot of support to a lot of other agencies, as well as people who do come for help. And we provide referrals, and of course, we provide some counsel and so much as we're able. But yeah, it's a significant problem. I don't think it's getting better just yet, and certainly the economy we're dealing with is not lending itself to people really, getting on the other side of some of the struggles they have.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, we're seeing people with jobs that are in need of the food bank, and it's just really tough times right now. So I know you had mentioned you offer counseling. So if somebody was in need of perhaps some counseling, some help with food or clothing, how do they go about getting that?
Yeah, well, they can certainly drop into our office or call our office, and we can certainly meet with people at their place of need. If we, of course, recognize that we're not capable of providing counsel that would, uh, technically be on the clinical or the professional side, we would certainly make a referral for that. Um, Most of us, in terms of frontline ministry, unless you're an actual registered counselor or counseling service, you probably shouldn't really delve too deeply into that world. We have some great people in this community that we'd make a referral for and to. And so, yeah, there's always help to be found. People just have to sort of identify with us and us with them, and we can certainly make sure that that happens.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, now you'd mentioned the thrift store earlier. So I understand that after being closed for the last couple of years with the COVID pandemic, the Salvation Army thrift store has reopened, but at a new location. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're located at 1811 2nd Avenue South here in Lethbridge, not too far from the church building, actually. We opened up right at the end of June after about a 2-year hiatus due to COVID, obviously, and so forth. But the benefit in this particular location is we actually own this building, and we're able to run our community and family services operation out of the same building. And so although the thrift store is quite a bit smaller than the one we had, it's brand new, it's bright, it's nice. It's like a nice shiny new toy, and just about everybody that walks through the door has something positive to say about it, and how wonderful it's laid out, how great the prices are, how bright and welcoming it is. I can't say enough about it, really. And we have a great manager in place and a great staff in place as well. So, you know what? We're just trying to regain a bit of a foothold in that part of our ministry, but we're doing some great things. We partner with AHS in terms of some folk coming and putting in some volunteer work and getting some life skill. We've got a handful of volunteers as well from other places, private volunteers, individuals who come and help us out. So yeah, it's going really well. But you know what? Things could always be better, right? So it's great that you've asked that question, because I'd really like to put a plug in for our thrift store and say that if you haven't seen it yet, you got to come out and visit. It's a great little location.
Okay, fantastic. I'll have to definitely add that to my list of things to do. And of course, Christmas is right around the corner. Hard to believe it, but so I believe your annual kettle campaign fundraiser is now underway.
That's right. Yeah. So we'll be doing much the same as what we've done in years gone by in terms of the location. So we're in the Walmart South. We're in the Walmart North location. We're in Superstore. Costco gives us a couple of weeks. We have the Save On Foods West location as well. Park Place Mall. So we're not that hard to find. And our campaign starts on November 28th, which is a Monday, and it runs all the way through till the Christmas Eve, which is a Saturday. So we'll cut a little short on Christmas Eve because we all want to get home and enjoy some of that apple cider and be with family. But it's going to be a busy time. We have some pretty lofty goals for it, and this is going to be a tough year for us, for every other charity, and in particular for pretty much everybody and anybody that I know.
Absolutely, absolutely. So with that in mind, do you have a fundraising goal in mind? And will you be offering the tap option this year for people to donate with their debit cards?
Yes, absolutely. We use the Tip Tap as a third-party function company, and so we'll attach that little apparatus to our kettle stand, and it's a $5 and a $10 or a $20 tap donation. Unfortunately, with Tip Tap, we're not able to provide receipts because there's no way of verifying. But a lot of people, they're okay with that. They'll just come up, they'll tap their card, they'll tell us, Merry Christmas, God bless us, thank us for what we do. And, to be truthful, I feel a little guilty when that happens, because in reality, I'm relying so much on the community, and it's really them enabling us to do what we do. And of course, by the grace of God, we go forth, right, together.
Amazing. Okay, so I'm curious then, I know you've got the tap in motion, but I'm curious what percentage of people still prefer donating the old-fashioned way with cash?
Yeah, there's a lot of both. The tap feature picked up quite a bit last year, but by and large, the majority of our donations come by way of cash. And of course, with the Christmas kettles, if someone were to put their donation into an envelope, we certainly could issue a receipt for that. So I would encourage people, if that's a deal breaker, by all means, we have envelopes and pens at each location, and we can certainly provide for that. And of course, we also do a Christmas fundraising, a letter campaign, which will be going out here shortly. And we hope to raise some funds through either people phoning in and making a credit card donation, or by mailing a check, or just dropping by the church office. So there's lots of different options. Just have to give us a call. We'll make sure we help you find a way to help us.
Okay, and then every year the Salvation Army also does the annual Toys for Tots outreach. So tell us about what that's all about and how we can get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So we partner with other agencies within Lethbridge as a community, and it's called Christmas Hope. And the benefit of doing that is that when we all collaborate together, there's more than ample resource, because there's well beyond, the scope of need that any one of us individually can address. And so as a Christmas Hope partner, people can either call us, or they can go online and they can fill out a registration form. And we just don't want anybody to get missed, right? Because we have no idea, who is new in terms of their need, because our society and our economy and all of the different struggles people are facing, who really knows how many out there are really going to struggle? And I just want to encourage anybody and everybody struggling to just pick up the phone or go onto the internet and just let us know. We will make sure, without any exception, we will make sure that people get help to put Christmas toys under the tree for their children, and hopefully make their day just that little bit brighter.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful? I absolutely love that campaign, one of my favorites for sure. And you'd mentioned before that the thrift shop is near your church. So some people may not be aware that the Salvation Army is actually a church, and you have regular Sunday morning services. So tell us what other activities viewers should know about.
Yeah, we do. So we have a variety of activities going on in the church building, anything from a quilting group through to Sunday morning worship services at 10:30. We do weekly Bible studies, a weekly prayer group. It tends to be visited by women. I try to stay away from that room, but I know they're praying for me. So we do a Tuesday evening kids zone, we call it. And so a lot of community youth have come out, and they enjoy a hot cooked meal. And we do some games, we do some discipleship, some life skills coaching training. We just listen to their stories. And that's really just recently started back up again after a little bit of a hiatus after the COVID issue. So yeah, it's taken a little while to sort of reboot that particular part of our ministry, but we're just so thankful for the folk that entrust their children to us on Tuesdays, and anybody and everybody in terms of child, K to 12 really can come out and enjoy that, and we'd never turn anybody away.
That's wonderful. Now, are people still fearful of COVID, or are they back to kind of regular attendance in person now?
I think there are really just a very small handful of people that still struggle with it. And I do realize it's a real struggle. And so I'm not taking a position one way or the other. I think we all in this wonderful land of freedom have the ability to make our own choices. And I hope, our wonderful land of freedom stays free. And so, there are a handful of people who still struggle, but by and large, I think most of the people that I meet or come across, it's pretty much behind them for the most part, and behind them in the sense that I don't think they want to be fearful. I don't think they want to be restricted. I just think people want to get on with living freely.
Yeah, people want to get back to life, I think.
Yeah. So no, by and large, I don't think it's a significant impact at this point. However, winter is coming, and we'll see what sort of new ideas come about over the year.
Yeah, exactly. It is cold and flu season after all. Definitely.
Yeah.
So is the Salvation Army in need of more volunteers? And if so, how can people get involved?
Absolutely. Again, they can call our office or they can go to our website. It's lethbridgesalvationarmy.ca. It's really quite simple. Or just pick up the phone and call us here at the church office, and we will happily plug you into wherever it is you feel that you could give us a hand. Of course, I'm going to need a lot of Christmas kettle volunteers as well. So please, if you're thinking right now by way of listening to what I'm saying about volunteering with us, please, I could use your help. We could all use your help.
Absolutely. Looks like we are winding down here on our questions, but Major Bladen, I know you and I talked a little bit briefly off camera, and I just wanted to check in with you. I know that you personally, your wife and yourself, you had a fire at your home. And how are you doing now? I just wanted to check in with you.
You know, I personally, I'm doing well, and so is my wife. No loss of life. We didn't even lose our little dog, which was just such a beautiful story in and of itself. But you know, material things in life come and go, and so we're just very thankful that the house was rebuilt after about a year, and we've been back in for just a little over a year. We had a lot of family around for Christmas past, and you know, things are getting back to normal. So we're doing okay. We're doing okay.
So happy to hear that, and I know it was a shock to the community when that happened. It was just awful, but I'm so glad that you two are back on your feet now, and your little dog too.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. So thanks so much for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on. I look forward to the next time.
For sure. Major Donald Bladen is the pastor at the Lethbridge Salvation Army. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.